what are you going to say to this next generation when we still have these situations going on? Can you say that you tried? Can you say, hey, I did my part? If not, why? Where is your hope? Where's your belief?
Welcome, fam. This is Courtney Russell Jr., and I'm here with my co-host, Emily Browker.
Welcome to Humanize.
We are two Americans with totally different backgrounds and life experiences.
We're coming together on this podcast to dive right at the heart of the three things that shut down tough conversations about race: culture, power, and ego.
The stories you are about to hear are meant to humanize those deeply involved in social justice. Welcome to the work, y'all. Let's get it.
Again, guys, thank you so much for being here. You could not have been at a better place and time. We're going to really try to dig deep and humanize the struggle and humanize individuals that are in the fight for human, social justice, and not just make it about a business, make it about the human. And like I said, humanize the struggle. Because once you humanize an issue, now it's really hard to oppress. And so let's get into the grapple right now. Thank you so much, Katrina, for being here.
Thank you guys so much for having me again.
Yes.
And I'm so glad that the Museum of Boulder has facilitated this. The Museum of Boulder has really stepped up and has done so much to try to put forward the type of inclusive community that it wants to see, just in all different areas. So it's I'm just so grateful that they're holding space for this today.
Awesome. Yes. So let's give a little context to how we got here today. So we are coming here live from the Museum of Boulder. We do have an audience, if we can hear you. Yes, there we go. It's a first-time experience on Humanize. That's great. Okay, so we're here for a second installment of a 4-part series on Black culture in Boulder, a topic which actually has evolved during our series. So to give context, sometime in 2023, we started to see some things emerging in Boulder, and we wanted to learn some more. So what was happening was the Museum of Boulder had the Proclaiming Black History exhibit, which is downstairs. I hope everyone has seen it. It's amazing. Then there's all this national news regarding Coach Prime, Coach Deion Sanders at CU. There were some big musical artists coming to Boulder that we didn't expect. Then there was the opening of the CU Center for African American Studies, African American Studies, and the success of This Is Not Who We Are. And it was all pointing to some really cool evolutions and emergence in Black culture in Boulder. Things are already changing on this spectrum. I read the everything from the cause, the Center for African American Studies, just very concerned about their funding right now. So in this process, we reached out to the Museum of Boulder with the intent of looking at what is happening with the Black culture in Boulder. Let's amplify what's happening. So when we did that, we knew we need to have our guest today, Katrina Miller, join us. So Katrina Miller is the visionary behind Blackout video production with over 20 years of experience. And she uses her film to spark critical conversations about society's most pressing issues. And she is the co-director of This Is Not Who We Are. And have people here seen that film? Yes. Okay. Amazing. So amazing. This is an award-winning documentary that explores the gap between Boulder's progressive self-image and the more complex lived experiences, both historical and contemporary. It's won multiple awards. So amazing. And we got to interview you back in 2021 when a film was still being edited. And so much has changed since then. And so we are going to talk today about this really big topic of DEI under fire, myths, truths, and the future. I do want to ask you just to give us a quick update about what you learned. I feel like I learned so much about Boulder through watching that film. And I'm curious about what you learned in the process of doing so many screenings with so many audiences and panels and talkbacks and all of that. So can we start there?
Absolutely. And Emily, that's such a good question, and one I haven't really been asked too much. What I've learned about Boulder since the film has come out is that there's a lot of people that care, and there's a lot of people that want to see our community move in a direction that's more diverse and equitable. And One thing that I have noticed more recently, though, is that with so much coming at us with our new presidential administration, a lot more people's concerns are really widening, and there's a lot more questions of how do we approach this? How do we fight back to make sure that we can keep not only DEI, but there's so many other things under attack right now. Our Social Security, it goes beyond that. And what I think is so important is that people remain hopeful. I feel like talking to people, sometimes I do get the feedback that, well, things won't change. People have told me that. Someone
things
even
won't change,
me,
like in Boulder?
Things won't change in Boulder. Things won't change beyond Boulder. Someone even told me after a screening once, but a movie doesn't do anything, and that's when I knew that was BS, because it's like, have you seen what's happened in Boulder? At the least, there's been so many screenings and people receptive to hearing these stories and looking beyond their own experience to learn about other people and to have that empathy. But what we also need is hope, and to believe that small groups and small things that we do can make a big impact, that our vote matters, that people that we put in legislation, that it matters, that these are supposed to be our representatives and talk for us. But I'm getting ahead of myself in what we're going to talk about today. Whew. But I have been, I will say, very pleasantly surprised with how receptive everybody has been. But the one question that I do get a lot of the times is, well, what do we do? And I don't know how many ways to say that we have to tap into our own resources, that we have to really understand what the issues are, discover within those issues, what is it that is bothering us? What is it that really we can't stand happening? Is it what's happening to education, to our kids at BVSD? Is it what's happening in the government? What is it? Is it at the police force? Join a club, join a group, and use your resources, use your voice, and become a part of people who are trying to make a change. Like this is something that people can do. And it's what I did, and I can't tell you how many times just personally it's been like, well, I'm just a filmmaker. I just, put other people's voices and stories out there. But it meant so much. It was so meaningful to do that with This Is Not Who We Are. And it's brought up so much awareness, but that's not all that needs to happen. There's more steps in that. Okay, we're aware. Now that we know better, let's do better. And that's kind of the place that I want to see us move into, where we're doing better.
Yeah, it can be like, I can lose faith sometimes that awareness will really do anything, because you see people who become aware, they see amazing film, but then they don't do anything. Or myself, like I get sidetracked and then like do something else. So it's good to be reminded we can focus on one thing and then do something about that one thing. And that way we can sort through all this.
Absolutely. And remain hopeful. I mean, to say, that won't do anything, it's just defeating and admitting defeat before it even gets started. There's no movements that ever did anything that didn't start with, I don't know how this is going to work out. Even the film, This Is Not Who We Are, like, are people going to be upset that we made this film because we're saying things about Boulder, not putting it in the positive light that people generally see it in the media, So yeah, you gotta have hope and some faith and, believe that those small movements can really turn into something bigger.
I really think that a system is dependent on you feeling as though you can't do anything for it to keep doing and keep propagating in that way. And so if you are audacious enough to have hope and believe, that is a first step of many. But it is dependent and hopeful of suppression and oppression that they won't even get to the point where they feel like it's doable. Because of the head start that oppressive systems have had, they feel as though, okay, we are already winning. They know that the safest place is to stay oppressed. Because like Harriet said, I could have freed 100 more slaves, million more slaves, so many more slaves if they knew they were slaves and willing to take the risk of freedom, because it is a risk. And so that is just the reality of like the work that we do. It is depending on us, not believing that we can change something that has such a crucial head start.
I have to say, I haven't shared this with you, but like during the last, I feel like I should be counting on not my fingers and toes, more than that, month and a half, however long since Trump took office, that I thought of you a lot in terms of your message of hope with all the work that you do and the stories that you told me about when you went from basically hatred to hope. And it's been very inspiring for me of like, Courtney could do it. I can try to do it. And so thank you for carrying that message forward and telling your story. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, we got to do it, man.
There's nothing else to do?
There's nothing else to do.
Okay.
So one way to try to chip away at people's hopefulness is to inundate people with a bunch of changes, a bunch of maybe executive orders, things that even sound ridiculous. The Gulf of America? What? To really throw out so much that people don't really know what to focus on. But also it starts feeling so overwhelming. It's like, how are we even going to start attacking this? That's what our administration is doing to us right now. It is. There's actually an interview that you can go up and look at of Steve Bannon talking about that this is the exact strategy. It's called Flood the Zone, I believe, to flood us with all of this stuff. So we are just so overwhelmed, and we might go for the wrong things. And of course, the media usually goes for the wrong things. Things that are more like enticing and what did Kendrick Lamar and Drake's beef, and there was so much more to that performance, which we'll get into. We'll get there. But that is a tactic to try to beat us down, and we have to really. That's when I said being clear on what it is that we want to fight and what we want to do. One thing that I feel like is very effective is one of these things that have come up right now is the boycott. People are boycotting, and that is huge. That's important. That is something that I've also heard feedback, and you might even see it on your own socials and whatnot. People saying, well, what's this going to do? What's the point of boycotting big box stores and things like that? This type of economic boycott is exactly what happened in Montgomery with the bus boycotts, okay? And people were even saying back then, this isn't gonna work out or become a thing, because these people, they still have to go to work, and they have their church functions and all this. They have to use the bus. They're not gonna be able to figure this out. The Montgomery bus boycott went on for 381 days, okay? If they can do it, they have put out a roadmap. That's why history is so important, and we can't just toss it out and forget about it, okay? And I feel like it's part of the reason why some might want us to forget about it, because there is a roadmap and a path to how we can move forward. And so while companies are saying, what's going on with the economy? Things must be bad. What I am hoping that they realize is that there has been an active movement to boycott these big box stores. It's been happening. On the 28th of February, there's going to be another level of this happening, and I hope that more people can join, because what we can do with our money is show these companies that we don't like that you're taking away your DEI initiatives, and we don't know what that means. When I say that, I say DEI is, it's a diversity, equity, inclusion. It's a bunch of principles, right? It's like a buzz phrase many people have had, but it's what you do in DEI, how you implement the equity and inclusion that's important. How do the people feel? And so it means less to me, people having the DEI and then taking it off. than it does how people actually feel in those companies and organizations. Okay, you're going to take away DEI. Well, what are you doing in its place? What are you doing instead? Because these principles are still super important, and it's not just about being a good person. Okay, if you're a business person, it's about having multiple perspectives and resources to make your product better, per se, because I definitely believe that diverse viewpoints make things better. Again, just coming back to the film This Is Not Who We Are, the co-director that I work with, Barrett, we are two very, very different people, but I feel like her coming at it from very financially well-off white woman, and then me, I'm kind of the opposite of all that. Us meeting together, we were really able to look at the problems in Boulder from multiple angles and being really honest about it in a way that, if it was just me doing it, I don't think I would have broke as much ground. And if it was just her, it would have been the same thing. So I've said a whole bunch. I am sorry. Let me let you guys
it's
talk.
on you.
But but I have a lot to say, I guess.
I love that. I love that.
That's awesome. Especially Subbart, the first time we interviewed you, you were like, can I interview you? Because I don't like to speak and I don't like to be interviewed. And through this whole process, you're used to the mic now.
Thank
and I
you.
love that. I love seeing that.
Thank you. I've had to really get used to being out like
that.
this, but
I love that.
Thanks.
Yeah. I think as far as DEI is concerned, I think the main thing about that is equity. Like, you can address diversity, you can address inclusion, but equity to me is giving every individual in your employ exactly what they need. And I feel as though that would be that's more important than a buzzword of DEI, right? And so by them saying those initiatives should be taken up, what they're essentially saying is, y'all don't need, we can tell you what you need, and you're going to have to abide by that. And the voice of the people need to be heard louder more than ever, because if they're banking on the fact of the government is too big, all this can happen, they're taking it away, we're going to deal with it. And if they flood the zone with the disinformation, the misinformation, and we continue to accept that, then it's going to be like, okay, see, it wasn't that important anyway. So damned if you do and damned if you don't. And so I would rather be on the side of damn if you do by working towards equity, and whatever happens through that fight, we deal with that, versus sitting back and complaining about shit that happens to me because I didn't fight.
Mm-hmm. But what about reverse discrimination? I would love to hear from both of you about what. Help me make sense of how the 1964 Civil Rights Act can be evoked right now to try to prevent reverse discrimination.
What the heck?
I'm happy you said that.
You about to have me on my NWA shit out here. We better stop playing.
Well, that's the letters that I'm getting.
Okay.
That's the letter that I got, the dear colleague letter of DEI cannot be any part of K through 12 schools, and the courts have blocked that for now, but they're evoking the Civil Rights Act. That's what they are doing in terms of executive order. Yes, Katrina.
Sorry, just jumped in there. I don't think that people understand what DEI really means and what it really encompasses. Mm-hmm. It's not just let's give Black people jobs. Let's give people of color a job.
Yeah, Black jobs thing.
Yeah. Yes, our current president seems to believe that there's certain thing as a Black job and a white job. And I think this is a reflection. I know this is a reflection of that. But when we look at DEI, it actually covers so much more. We all know that it encompasses women. It encompasses veterans, okay? It encompasses people that have disabilities and disabilities that we might not be able to see, neurodivergence or MS, all types of things like that. How do we, with DEI, make our make environments comfortable for these people that we have in a space, and that's really what DEI is looking at. So when you say reverse discrimination, I'm like, who are we discriminating against? Like, it's not a logical thing to say, in the face of talking about DEI, and it just shows a misunderstanding of it. One interesting example that happened in the news, I think it was within the week, is how Trump fired a gentleman, and I had to write his name down, but you guys might have seen this. General Charles Q. Brown. He was the the chair of Joint Chief of
CQ
Staff.
Brown.
Yep. And he was fired, and he had served in the military for what, like
40
three?
Yeah, 40 years.
Yeah. So many, over 3 decades. Like 4-star general, like all of the accolades and things like that. He got fired and was replaced by a white man. A third level. So he's one step down from this black general that was fired. He just doesn't have the same type of merits as this person. Okay? So DEI, the purpose of DEI is to make sure that things like that don't happen, okay? It's to make sure that in a space, maybe let's say a workspace, a person is looking at all candidates that are qualified and not just like, I'm going to hire my buddy, or I'm going to hire you because I feel comfortable with you. You look like my cousin, and that's what can happen. We see that with Trump and the general that he fired. So again, if we're talking about reverse race, it just doesn't really have a place in the conversation.
I mean, reverse affirmative action, Black Lives Matter, reverse racism, all this is bullshit because like people of color are not in the position to be racist.
So break that down.
Right?
Break it down.
You have to be in a position of power to be racist. Now, we could be prejudiced, but you can't be racist because we're not in the position of power systemically to affect change on a systemic level to other races because we're at the bottom of the rung. Mm. So for you to say reverse will put us in a place of power which we've never had. And so when you have things like DEI, is to kind of level a playing field for marginalized groups, not Black people. And so like marginalized group where it's women, trans individuals, anyone that's marginalized can get a seat at a table with a DEI initiative, or when you had affirmative action to try to go to college because we couldn't go to college. No matter if you could have cured cancer, if you're Black, you cannot do that. So there had to be people try to attempt to level a playing field that was built against us. And so you cannot reverse anything if it doesn't exist.
If it doesn't exist, yeah. Do you think, so as someone in the field of DEI, I'm kind of trying to say, okay, this is a complete moment of disruption. Maybe this is a moment for some self-reflection. What have we done wrong? Like, did we do something wrong in DEI? I don't know. All the people doing diversity, equity, inclusion work. It's a lot of people. So do you think that there are some missteps? Like if we were to take this moment of like, okay, what can we learn from this moment and do better in its next iteration? Because it's going to be iterated. It's not going to go away. Like, what would that be?
I don't necessarily think it was like something specific that happened, but one thing, I was studying history. I'm actually a student of history. I didn't just study journalism in school. It was also history was my minor as well. So as a student of history, I understand that there is like a pendulum that happens with movements. And so what all this pushback is and pushback against DEI is really a sign that things were heading in the right direction. And all these conversations that we were having and companies adopting DEI practices and thinking about what that means, that was all working. But they're, powers that be that don't necessarily want that to work, that feel like if you get an opportunity, then that's going to take away from my opportunity. So yeah, let's not do this uplifting thing. So I feel like that's where the pendulum has gone. And it's happened before a lot. Black men had the right to vote when slavery was abolished, and that right got taken away. And then it had to get reinstated with the Voting Rights Act in 1965, Yeah, because there's a lot of crazy laws and whatnot put in place during Jim Crow era. And when Reconstruction was supposed to be happening after the Civil War, that the number of Black people in the South outnumbered white people. And since they were voting, then they were actually voting in Black people into legislation. And there was a point where there were 7 African Americans working with the White House in Congress, actually. And because of that, there was a pushback. And it was like, okay, the Confederate South was like, what can we do? Let's have testing at polling places. Let's intimidate at polling places. Let's close polling places. Some of this sound familiar? Okay, because we have this pendulum. And so I think it's more so that that's just going to happen because there is maybe a thought of a reset happening. Like maybe there will be some medium where it's not too far one way or the other. But I think that's the purpose of this pendulum. But all I can say is that is what happens. So, yeah, that's how I see it.
Pendulum.
I agree. And is for me, it's similar to banning books, changing curriculums, penalizing individuals for speaking about certain things. Because if you continue to highlight issues that affected people of color negatively, sometimes, and because I've talked to, coming from the South, white people feel as though, what if you get so much freedom that you do what we did to you?
Right. The ultimate fear.
Right. That is a fear that I'm going to lose in a place where we literally can print money, like at a country where we can do that. Like, why do you think resources is so limited that you're going to step on the necks of individuals who have generationally been powerless to make sure that we stay in power? That is what I don't understand and refuse to understand because I know it's wrong. And to make matters worse, when you take away education, like you enslave a community again, because that's what poverty is. It's a lack of knowing that there's something existing that can be better than what I presently have. And so now I have to accept my reality as law and continue in the ignorant shit, to be honest. Because if all I have is this out here, I'm going to make the best of a real bad situation. And that's what we do, And so the fear is, if I read about this, if I know there can be a future, if there can be a Black woman that can be president, that gonna mess up, give hope to other Black people, other Black women. Oh, we can't have that. So now we got, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, once you enslave a mind and take away education, you won. You don't even have to have chains anymore. So that's my little soapbox, my little rant, my fault. No. Back to you.
Anytime. Thank you. Anytime. But I think what is important moving forward, and again, not saying, oh, what did we do wrong, but being very specific again about when we say that we want to have DEI at our business and our organization, what do we mean? Yeah. What core business practices do we have that are, upholding equity and inclusion within our staff? Is there psychological support for people that might go through an incident? These are things that people letting go of their DEI, if we're going to shift to this pendulum, these are what to look at. It's not about the buzzword. It's not. It's about what people are doing. So, yeah.
So we'll go back in time. I have mentioned this every episode the last couple of months. I'm reading a book, Master Slave, Husband, Wife. So my mind is always in the 1850s right now. And it's the time that you were just describing, Courtney, where like the white slave owners are really scared, because there are so many Black people throughout the South, and they're like, we have to hold on to the power. We have to, if a slave has escaped, we have to go get them and get the fugitive slave and bring them back, just to make a point, that we have the control. What is going on for that white person that they have? What happens to their soul when they dehumanize someone so extremely? And what has happened in my DNA as a white person coming from a legacy of people that were able to dehumanize to that extent? And like what sort, the collective liberation potential of moving through this as a society is rarely talked about. And it's just like, that's so sad for a whole portion of society to have that in them.
You make an assumption that they view people of color as humans.
No, I'm saying they don't.
They don't, right?
But obviously, everyone is human.
Nah, you can't.
I think they went so far
because they're not human.
I can't imagine.
We're not, because if we were,
I can't imagine.
You wouldn't be able to do some of those things.
Exactly.
If you felt, this is why even in the Constitution, we're 3/5 of a man. We're not even whole.
Right.
Because you're not legally breaking a law if you oppress a Black person.
Mm-hmm.
Because on the Constitution, we're not men at all. So we don't have the right to vote. We don't have the right to do anything. We have to move in a certain way, because how dare you think that you're on the same level as an actual human? It's a brilliant construct to make sure that you're staying. That's why when people say it's legal. What the fuck does that mean?
What do you mean?
It's a lot of shit that's legal. That's not humane. So that's a whole nother conversation. I'm sorry. I'm taking it left there. Katrina, back to you.
I guess I haven't really thought about it in the way that, like, you brought it up. I think of it more as people feeling like if people have equal access or any gains, that it means that something is being taken away from them. Mm-hmm. And that's how I really wrap my head around moving forward in this work and mm-hmm. trying to shatter those myths, mm-hmm. That it has a lot more to do with just equity as a society, liberty for all people, what we can do to move forward so that we can, so that we know how to fight tyrants like that come into the administration right now. We need to know how to do that. And I feel like a lot of people have forgotten
mm-hmm.
or, just have a lot of fear of the unknown, like what's going to happen. But yeah, that's really the more of the way that I look at it, with the lens of equity than, wow, this person doesn't look at me like I'm even like a human being or real person. Like I can't really let that like seep into myself to
right.
walk into the world and
right.
to do the things that I do, because I would be very, very angry. I'm aware of situations, but again, I have to frame it in the way that I told you to really
mm-hmm.
look
mm-hmm.
at it.
And just to clarify, I'm not saying that I feel like people have the mindset of enslavers right now. I'm just saying, I think being like just watching the threads and the legacies and the like, what are we still unpacking and unraveling as a society? And I see the benefit of everyone in the walk towards collective liberation and equity being shoulder to shoulder, instead of this idea of like, oh, we're just propping this group up. It's like, we all benefit.
Right.
And I think this, like the dialogue around reverse discrimination is very clever, right? Of like, oh, way to find another way to divide people and make people feel like they're the victim when they're not the victim. And in terms of like, what's happening to us, I think that this is just like a great way to stoke fear so that we just continue to attack each other. And if we continue to attack each other and feel like oh my God, there's 500 executive orders every day. We're perfect. We're like the perfect little textbook society to collapse.
Right.
You know?
Right. And besides being inundated with, things, I know that that's another tactic to keep us fighting and keep us divided with against one another and whatnot. And by putting this spin on what DEI is, that it's about, giving people of color jobs. I mean, that's the myth that's out there. That is very divisive.
Very.
And so I could see, how just having that untrue definition would make people, say, okay, then maybe this is something we should ditch. But again, it's not about the buzzword. It's about what companies are doing, how the people feel, how people are psychologically supported when incidents happen. Okay, that's what it is. If all that stuff's in place, don't call it DEI.
I was just going to ask, do you imagine this being like do you think the future is like a new word put to it? Do you think we're going to be able to reclaim the term?
Yeah, I can't predict it, but what my hope is that is what happens. We can't say these certain buzzwords, so let's show what we're doing in our practices as well. Things that are important also just for us as regular, people, is to continue to have conversations like this. I feel like there's a lot of fear of the unknown. What is all of this diversity, equity, inclusion going to lead to? But we need to have conversations where people can be candid and not be afraid to maybe make a misstep. More leaders need to be able to have space and do that instead of always just afraid of having a conflict. It's like, well, let's agree to meet and not have a conflict and talk. And I'm talking even about our own city leaders and organizations that have certain beefs. They should get together and really talk about it, like adults. And also, it's our legislation that we are supporting means something. I've seen so many different clips lately of different attorney generals or other people, representatives of states, going up and standing up for the people in their community. And that's what we need. We need people to do that. And we do have, Michael Doherty running for the Colorado Attorney General next. And he has every intention to fight for us and fight for our humanity, to keep women's rights, trans rights, all of the things that we've been talking about that make us human. He wants us to have that and have the pursuit of liberty like anybody else. So we have to pay attention to that. Who's in these positions? Who's going out there to talk? Are we putting those people in those right spaces? And then also something that's important that we do for each other is have I think it's important to have events and to support Black events, and not even just Black events, just events that are inclusive, any group, just show up. But also to learn, okay, to educate so that there's not so much othering happen and you don't feel so distant from other people. You can have an understanding of why, okay, this is why DEI is important, because this person has a different set of circumstances than I do, and how do they need to have support to kick ass at their job, So if that means accommodating a vet in a certain way, then let's do it, So,
yeah.
Well, damn. Amen.
Thank you.
I am always in awe of people when they talk about DEI in a way that is going to solve problems. I feel as though the main thing is about belonging. Everybody wants to feel belonging in a company that they leave their family, they go for 8-10 hours a day, they sit there. If you don't feel as though you belong and you are welcomed and valued, it's very hard to be there. And I think that is what DEI for me was supposed to is supposed to do. I really appreciate this conversation because when you're talking about DEI, for me, that's just a great word, meaning I want to belong and I don't want to waste my time and I want to feel appreciated with the job that I'm doing.
Yep.
Yeah.
When I hear that a company has DEI, they're practicing that, they have those policies in place, I'm like, oh, this is a safe space. This is a space where I am probably going to feel comfortable, and that doesn't happen a lot, around these parts. So yeah, and that's what it means to me, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
What does a safe place or safe space mean? What does that mean?
Let's see. I want to say something more than I can just be myself. You know what it is? It's that I'm trusted. Mm-hmm. I'm trusted to do my job. I'm trusted that I have the competency. That there's people. What was that? Comfortability. Yeah, exactly. There's people that'll be friendly towards me. Who might have a curiosity about me. That's what that means. Yeah.
Yeah, because we grapple with that a lot. Like when you say safe to me, I mean, no conversation is unsafe for me. What unsafe means to me is like I may die. Like if we had this conversation, literally you could shoot me. Like that's an unsafe conversation for me. Not me being uncomfortable that our opinions may not agree. So
yeah.
I mean, and it can get to a point where if you speak your truth, it can get to be unsafe. And so when people say, I just want to be in a space where I am safe, I want to dig into that more because safety for me and my background and where I come from, it looks a lot different than I guess Emily. When you say, hey, I'm feeling unsafe right now. Oh shit, what does that mean? I'm looking for a dude out there with a gun. Like, what are we talking about? I'm getting ready to run.
Yeah. I have to be careful with my words around you.
Yeah. Unsafe. Oh, shit. It's done. Let's go.
No. I definitely understand that there's different levels of unsafe because there's definitely a different unsafe is when I'm walking from my car from directing a concert venue at night to my car. Like, that's a very different feeling of unsafe. And I'm like watching my back constantly. But no, there is definitely an unsafe that you can have in a space that is like pushing you out and that is psychologically damaging, actually, because even in the film, This Is Not Who We Are, I talk about, it was real hard to make friends. And I really didn't even want that in the film because I'm like, that is so frivolous because, Zayd has like all these people around him in this situation surrounding him with a gun. And I'm talking about, well, I couldn't make a friend, but when the film came out, you don't know how many people came up to me and told me that that was their story and that was their case and that they were, I don't know, like it was cathartic in a way to see it played out, to see that other people had this thought. And it's like, oh, really? Oh, and I've talked to people, you quit going to CU because you couldn't handle how uncomfortable it felt as a Black student and all of that means. So no, this can actually have psychological effects. So it's not somebody with a gun next to you, but I mean, it can really feel like that to your soul.
Yeah.
And to your nervous system.
100%.
Yes.
I mean, your brain does not differentiate between the physiological and psychological safety differences. And that impact is felt with heart damage, with all these different things that my peers are going through. And so it's really important.
And just like when we're talking about psychological trauma, that for people of color at times is even a privilege because we don't have the time or resources or even ability to address psychological trauma at times because we just trying to live. That's another level of us trying to make it through the day. You know what I mean? So this has been a part of my journey to also say that is unsafe too. So I wasn't trying to like say it doesn't work. I'm still growing in my DEI work because at the end of the day, this is not something that I said I want to be an activist. I never cared about that because I'm just trying to get it.
Right.
It's just that when you know and you start to see, you can't unsee now. Now you got to choose, are you going to continue in the bullshit or are you going to make a change? And so now as I'm have to grapple with mental health is important, like mental health, if you say that, bro, get your ass out there and go out there. You feel depressed. You know what's depressed? Poverty. Go to work. Oh shit. Okay, so I can't be sad today? Nah, you can't be sad. Don't cry. Like, let's go, And so as we get older and we start to have time and space to address the unsafeness of sometimes living in America as a person of color, that's a whole nother thing to unpack.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're going to get back to the episode in just a moment, but we wanted to give a quick shout out to our supporters on Patreon, as well as our supporters who have bought our merch from our website. Our podcast is principally sustained and propelled by listeners like you. And we wanted to make sure you knew how to get on that train. So to support us on Patreon, please go to the Patreon page and look up the Humanize podcast. There we have some exclusive content that we haven't released to the wider public, as well as ways to engage with the community. And if you want to check out some of the Humanize merch, the t-shirts, sweatshirts, mugs, and different things, go to our website, thehumanizepodcast.com, and select shop at the top. And all of that support that we receive financially goes directly to our amazing editing team and making sure we're bringing you the highest quality content you can get. Thank you. And let's go back to the episode. I'm sort of wondering if there's any comments or questions or things. Oh, there's a hand. Come on up to the microphone. There's another hand.
Come on now.
Hi, thank you all for having this podcast this evening. I think everyone can hear me. Yeah. So you asked a question that has been in my head, and it was, where did DE&I go wrong?
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about it, and my opinion is the interpretation of the words diversity and equity. This current administration wants us to believe diversity and equity means this person is getting a job over someone else because now we have to be diverse and now we have to be equitable. When really it should mean this person who is just as qualified now has a seat at the table because we are working on diversifying and being more equitable. So I think if we really looked at the way we use our language and how it impacts our society, we would have been better off on safeguarding our DE&I initiatives. And also to safety. Oh, that was a rough one because I was just like, physically safe is one thing, but environmentally safe is another. And you mentioned growing up in a Black society, like you can't, if you are in an impoverished situation, you don't have time to be sad. So that's unsafe. Knowing that if you're put in a situation that you can't get out of and safely keep going, that's unsafe. And sometimes that means I'm in an uncomfortable environment in my home because I have nowhere else to go, or I am in an uncomfortable environment at my workplace because I don't have the savings to say, you know what, I'm just going to go. Which, by the way, none of these are my current situation. I am safe. But I just wanted to say that I was really thinking about that as well. And, appreciate you. And thank you all.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi.
What's up?
Hi.
Hello.
What's going on?
What's up, everybody?
Yeah.
I have this simple question. I never heard of it before. Reverse racism. What is that?
Nothing.
Oh. Yeah, and to be honest, I'm happy you said something, Courtney, because when you asked, I'm like, what? That doesn't exist. So, yeah.
Well, it's a way of saying that because of the color of my skin, you don't like me. And now, if I was a white guy, you say I don't like you because of the color of your skin, you just did the same thing that you're claiming that I did to you. So it's in reverse.
Okay.
And so you're saying reverse racism like that. And so you're doing the same thing that you said that shouldn't be done, and it's unfair.
Okay.
So that's what that is. And
what's your definition? Since you brought it up.
There's a lot to pick apart there. There's like so many layers. Where I hear the term used, and first of all, there's, I guess, under underscored in this, the way that it was used, is the assumption that racism should be racism against Black and brown people, not racism against white people. Like, so there's an assumption that that's the direction of racism. So then reverse racism would be racism against white people. And the way that I have heard people use it actively in the last few years is white men saying, I can't get a job because of reverse racism, because there are these quotas, which I've never come across a company with a quota. There's these quotas and initiatives trying to bring in more Black and brown people. And now as a white person, I can't get a job. I am being discriminated against. Mm-hmm. That's reverse racism. That's how the term is thrown around.
That's all I wanted to
ask. And I actually just put on my Facebook today, just this stand-up comedian who so well broke it down. He's like, reverse racism. Okay, yeah, that could exist. If we went back 400 years and instead of all of the people from England and France going out and colonizing the world, all of the people from Africa went out and colonized the world, and they got all of the riches and exported all of the raw materials from the rest of the world and made all the white people do all the work, and then we could use that term, reverse racism. And he breaks it down pretty well in terms of the historical context. So that's where I heard the term. Sure. Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for clarifying it. Yeah.
I'll put it back towards you, because you asked a valid question, and like, what goes to, and I guess I'm going to pose it to the white people in the room. And I haven't addressed this before. What mentally happened to the white person when they dehumanize another human? I'm going to leave the black-white thing, because we're not the only one. They did it to the Jews.
Of course.
That you dehumanize someone. And I'm going to bring it right back to us boycotting. It's all in the name of money. It's to rise one up and to take one down. Mm-hmm. And my decomposing of that is that you question who you are. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to pose it to everybody in the room. If you know who you are as a white person, why would you dehumanize another white person to get power? Mm-hmm. And the boycotting is... with that, if you go to the soul of what push everything forward, cha-ching is money. Yep. And to boycott the companies is to where they succeed the most. Mm-hmm. We keep empowering them with our money. They are nothing without us. And we don't seem to accept that. We don't seem to give that. We don't seem to claim our power. So and the other point is to, what could we do as individual? Please don't let all the black people stand up. Like right now, they're like, where are the black people at? And we say we're resting because we were the 92% that took the vote, that did the vote. We're resting because don't push it back on us. Just because your ancestor did something wrong, this is your chance to correct the journey. You have a voice. Use it. Stand in the gap with everybody else. And that can change something or put something forward. But my question is to you, is because the part where you don't want to pay the price for the crime, because the crime is done. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to pay the price for it. How is your children going to survive knowing that you continue this behavior into this century and you're still denying the crime? Mm-hmm. And what is that doing to your generation to come? Mm-hmm. And where do you stand up and say, I don't want to do this anymore. Mm-hmm. I am a human being and you're a human being. I don't want to dehumanize. You have to stand up and stand in the gap of the people. I mean, we could go to the Bible. He said it's harder for a rich man to get to the eye of a needle than a camel. Yeah, you know that code. Is that if you keep standing up, you're gonna still get you are I think you're collaborating with your silence is collaborating. Yeah. So stand in the gap and stop saying, I don't know what I should do, and stop being afraid of doing something. Show up to the spaces. But the thing is, your vote is what counts, and I'm so scared of your vote now, because I believe one thing when Pamela was running, and I just accept this is who America is, and she keeps showing me who she is. So the thing is, how are you going to make it better for your generation to not have that mental inheritance stress that they carry forward, where they have to be hateful to a Black person because the question come, you owe me something because you took my generation and crushed them. And now you're expecting the people that was crushed to come out and help you. And you're still looking for help when there was something done. So you're not paying the price. So for your mental being, how do you compute that? Because if I'm not taught about that before, how does a white person this generation sit with themselves, knowing that all of this have gone in the past, and how? So that's a question back to you.
Well, I can tell you I'm not going to have a clear and thought through answer to this. It's going to be some verbal spewage. I started to think about this when we had an interview with Dr. Rebecca and he was talking about the work of E.D. Du Bois, and that E.D. Du Bois wrote a book, The Souls of Black People, and he wrote a book, The Soul of White People. And it's about what happens to the soul of white people to do this. And that was like, wow, I feel like that was probably 2 years ago, and I'm still on a journey of understanding. Like, what does that mean for me? How am I an incomplete human? Because I do believe if we're a complete human, that we treat everybody like a complete human. We see ourselves in others. So there must be some way in which I've been taught and enculturated and told again and again of a certain, looking at white supremacy culture as a very constant practice has been really useful for me. Looking at the work of Tema Akunin has been really useful for me, looking at, either or thinking. Where does supremacy thinking even come from? Like all of these pieces, it's very much like an ongoing journey. It's deeply humbling and deeply empowering. And I feel like when I read the 1619 Project by Nicole Hannah-Jones and all of her cohort, I didn't walk away being like, oh, it's my I'm responsible for slavery, like this body. But I walked away being like, oh, now I understand my country a lot better. And understanding the whole and seeing the whole then gives me more pieces to work with as we start to move forward. And I think that that's part of like, when I hear diversity, sometimes it's like used as a swear now, right? Like it's like a bad thing. Like DEI is a bad thing. Woke is a horrible thing. Everyone wants to diss it. They totally rebranded all of it, right? But when I think of diversity, it's that. It's seeing seeing the whole. It's getting the whole. It's getting everything that's there. And so I think that white people and myself, I'm certainly on this journey. I can share the cohort that I'm part of. It's being run by Invisible Paradigms, really amazing organization. Which is a constant reflection of like, okay, how am I enculturated in white supremacy culture? How does it show up? What's the antidote when there is so much individualism and people protecting their own? How do we bring in the collectivism? How do we take care of the community? It's not self-care, it's community care and all of these pieces. So it's a complete ongoing path that I see as my spiritual path. That is honestly what I see.
So I was recently reading a book called Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith. And I want to take you guys on a thought experiment. And this is stated multiple times in his book that the price of a slave was twice as much as the price of labor. So if you could invest all the wealth that Black people had pretty much stolen from them back into this nation, where instead of, paying people to catch people, trafficking humans across different continents and all that stuff, all that energy, all that human calorie usage and like channel it in building a relationship in a nation, how much more wealth would we have generated for ourselves to enjoy today throughout those 400 years? And that's pretty much the thought experiment.
Yep.
Well,
I'll jump in with the first thought is I don't think we'd have a climate disaster right now.
no.
Nope, absolutely not.
Because if we didn't adopt the mindset of exploitation and extraction in order to make bigger and capitalize, I think we wouldn't have gotten so out of balance with the earth. I think it would have been much more balanced. What are your thoughts?
I agree with that. I think just a culture of exploitation has really led to some serious problems where we are now, and it's just going to continue to get worse. Again, our administration not really prioritizing what's happening with fires and climate change and flooding and all of that. So, yeah, I've always said it that it would be wonderful to actually focus on like real human problems that we have about our planet, as opposed to, fighting with each other. So absolutely. Yeah. Courtney.
I mean, my mind, first off, my man is blown. Yeah, that was brilliant. And it takes me to a thing of, again, exploitation, because when you're exploiting individuals instead of working with, you run a risk to be fearful that you will be overtaken, and there's a you're perpetually under fire. This is why when you had the slave revolt of Nat Turner, not only did they hang my man, they had to make sure they skinned his skin off, put him through a wood chip. Like, they had to make sure his legacy couldn't even be remembered. And you know that if you want to do the same thing, this is their fate. And so when you talk about exploitation, you go down the path of fear. It's led by fear, because you can't exploit without thinking that one of these days something's gonna happen to me as some give back. Like, if you keep slapping the shit out of a dog that loves you, sooner or later that dog will bite your hand, and the dog loves you. So I think that is the fear because of exploitation. What would happen if too much is given to a race that has been, or a culture, or the cultures that have been exploited, whether it's Native Americans, whether it's Hispanics, whether it's Black, whether it's Jews. Like, exploitation happened on a level where if I was the one that was doing exploiting, I would be afraid that sooner or later shit's gonna come back to get me. So it's like you just that mind exploration piece was. I'm gonna be thinking about it for a minute. Appreciate that, bringing that in, man. Thank you.
So we need to start heading into wrapping this up. This always my role.
Oh, that's your role.
That's saying up to keep us on. Thank you for the participation from Ron. I'm curious if you can bring us home with some thoughts about Kendrick.
Okay. Absolutely.
Turn that TV off.
Hey, the revolution will be televised. That's what he said. Coming off of a song from Gil Scott Heron called "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised." And what he meant by that is that the revolution will be in our mind, okay? It starts with an awakening first within us of an understanding, and what we do from there, hey, that's the rest of the revolution. So, but Kendrick's saying no, it's televised right now, right here, and I'm kicking it off. One thing that I feel like is important, I'm going to say it again, these boycotts coming up. Hey, in the past, it was 381 days of Montgomery bus boycotts. What are we going to be able to do? It's going to start on one day, but what can we build on after that?
Can I ask a clarification question about this? So, tomorrow is the day that there's going to be a big boycott, correct?
It's already started, but there's different places where you can jump in.
There's supposed to be like an economic blackout tomorrow. Now, does this mean not including local businesses and food? Like, is this what are we aiming for? Everything. No one's spending money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So if you need gas, get it tonight.
Yep.
Okay.
Don't go to the bank.
Okay.
Yep.
Economic blackout.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's like, and to Adderley's point, what are you going to say to this next generation when we still have these situations going on? Can you say that you tried? Can you say, hey, there was this boycott and I did my part? If not, why? Where is your hope? Where's your belief? I just spoke about this. This is how we're going to be able to fight this as long as we have belief in ourselves that we can. So a part of this with the boycotts, another part we need to do is actually be very visible about it. Okay? We actually need to be showing, hey, these are people boycotting. Put it out there in visuals. There's so much that we're not supposed to be saying. It's, certain words are criminalized. So what are we going to show? How are we going to show, companies going to show the communities that they want to have, and how are we going to show the progress that we're having? How are we going to show our legislators that are actually, speaking to power when we elect the correct, attorney generals and put the people in place that are going to speak for us? We need to be recording this stuff. We need to be putting it out there, putting it on blast, so people are always seeing us and hearing from us and seeing what's going on in our, in our movement. Kendrick Lamar really understood visuals and symbolism, okay? There is absolutely no way that I can dive into every single thing with the amount of time we had. But just a couple of things that I found really interesting in his performance was that it was very meta. It was like a game within a game. That stage was set up to look like thank you, with the X and the square and stuff. Yeah, we play PlayStation at home. So what Kendrick was participating in was the American game, was the game as a Black man. Uncle Sam, Samuel Jackson, he was the narrator through all this and the voice of America per se, throughout this. And you hear him say things to Kendrick like, do you know how to play this game? Can you play this game? Well, we'll see. Kendrick starts performing and does a certain song. Uncle Sam says, oh no, it's too Black. It's too ghetto. It's too loud. Okay? Quite interesting because what he's doing is kind of being this voice of mainstream, of a lot of the people actually who didn't like the performance, that gave their reason why. Well, that was just too ghetto. It was just too Black. They already knew what people were going to say before it even happened. So then Kendrick, he goes on, and I think at a point he had SZA, she was singing in there, and Uncle Sam says, okay, that's calm. We like that. Yeah, let's do more of that. That's what we want to see. Okay, more commentary on this expectation of how Black people should play this game that Kendrick is in. And then Kendrick has... then he does the song, Thank You, Not Like Us. Yes, he does. He does Not Like Us. And Uncle Sam's like, okay, now you done lost your mind. Okay. And the whole reason behind that, Kendrick was not supposed to perform that song. There's this whole lawsuit going on between him and another rapper who is named, yes, from Degrassi. Couple people got that. Yeah, so he wasn't supposed to do that. And that's why Uncle Sam's like, oh man, you lost your mind, because there's certain rules that he is supposed to follow within this game. And one of it was, don't mention that, And Uncle Sam just kind of like left after that. Oh, and then we see Serena Williams show up, and she does her dance that she did during Wimbledon. Okay. But she got heavily fined for doing this dance and for celebrating afterwards. And it's a dance that's out of the Black culture. Okay. Not here. She did it on the Super Bowl stage, because it was this message like, yeah, we see what you're telling us the game is, but we're not going to play it. The revolution will be televised. Okay. So if you talk to somebody who says, I didn't like that performance, it was bad, it was too ghetto, it was too black, I don't know what they're going to say. Please tell them that Kendrick Lamar is an award-winning poet, that he is a master of the English language. And if somebody had a hard time understanding, because the audio was a little weird in the beginning because they were having technical issues, look up his lyrics and read it. See what he is actually saying. Is there a real problem with what he's saying? And I really say that for all rap music, but I really wanted to break that down. Just some of it. There is so much more. It goes so much deeper. But the way he used imagery and symbols, it has had people talking for weeks. We need to be masterful in those ways, okay? To use these visuals, especially if people are trying to silence the way that we talk, to show people what we want, what we mean, and to show a path as well. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add to what Kendrick Lamar did that night. He also had the American flag made up of black people.
Yeah.
Is to symbolize America was built off of black people. And it's one thing I just wanted to add because I heard you talking about it.
Pulitzer Prize winner.
Yeah.
Yep.
Say it again.
Award-winning.
Pulitzer Prize winner.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm even thinking now the American flag, like the big images are bent over,
Yes.
on the backs of black people,
Yes.
even more specifically. Yeah. Okay.
I want to add more, but I don't have enough time, so I'm going to stop here.
Yeah. And that's great. And there's also another way to look at that as well. So the thing about Kendrick, and he's like Shakespeare. Like there's so many levels to this.
People are still uncovering. It's
Right.
amazing.
I know. The thing about that performance is there was people in red and there was people in white. And some people say that will symbolize perhaps the Crips and the Bloods. Well, what Kendrick was responsible for was something called a pop-up. It was like a pop-up. Yeah, the pop-up concert it was in California, where he got peoples from those two different gangs together to try to just stop all their differences and to unite and be like, no, there's something bigger that we can, fight against, or humanity. And so it's really also a nod to that pop-up that happened as well. See, there's just layers on top of layers, because at the end of the day, what he's trying to do is unite, and that's part of his whole message.
Vision that we have going on within the country right now. Too.
Yeah.
Norma,
Bring us home.
Yes.
All right. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
I'm Norma
Hello.
Johnson, and I'm a poetic storyteller. So I'm going to turn around a little bit here. So this is the way that I speak to some of these things.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming.
And I want to thank y'all for an amazing show.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Yeah. So this piece is called What's in Your Bones? There comes a time when silence is betrayal. Quote by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. This quote by Dr. King caught more than my eye. It ferociously caught my heart. And then it proceeded to navigate a complex journey to someplace deep down within my very bones. I felt a shudder that forbade me to turn away. At least, not without consequences. I had a deep, intrinsic knowing that the path to liberation comes through the journey of what lies buried and silent in our bones. And when no voice is given, it continues a silence in our bones and in our children's bones and their children's bones. It has no agenda of its own. We create those. It's merely a holding place for our fears. Silence is the gatekeeper. Dis-ease and unrest are the rumblings signaling a shifting of the buried contents. It's a crossroads, a place where past, present, and future meet. A place where ancestors and descendants recognize their value for each other. Where what was and what is, when merged, can transform what is becoming. Our silence. It's a dare and a threat. And buried within it is a garden of unimaginable beauty and power and strength. What do we tell ourselves to maintain the silence? What do we yearn for that propels our breaking it? Silence is not quiet, y'all. It screams and hollers and pushes back and denies and changes the subject. It buries and alters truths and devalues our humanity and relationships with each other. There comes a time when silence is betrayal. In this quote, I wanted a reminder that there are consequences to my silence. And those consequences live in my bones. Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a mic drop there.
Thank you guys so much.
That's
for
a wrap.
coming out. We
Thank you.
appreciate you. Thank you again.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Humanize. Please remember to like and subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss an episode. Join us on Instagram or Facebook to continue this conversation at the Humanize Podcast.
Let us know if you want to learn more about the professional trainings we offer. And of course, tune in next time as we continue the work. Thank you and much love.